Hey guys, welcome back. Today we are making 5 wreaths in 5 hours, and here are some of the items we're using. I ended up not using that mesh tubing, but we used pretty much everything else. A Dollar Tree wreath form for all of them. They seem to be a lot thinner than they used to be. We're going to start by cutting our pipe cleaners into thirds, so about 4 inches a piece. But before we get it started too much, I want to show you why I'm using orange pipe cleaners for mostly red and black stuff. But this is my craft room, which I now call a studio. And all the stuff that was stored in there is now in boxes in what I call the warehouse. And I mean, it was so bad. I might put some pictures up of how bad it was, but I couldn't work. So I just started stacking everything into boxes. Now that is a bunch of mesh that I'm going to put online. And there's a lot of ribbon that I'm going to put online onto DIYDion.com. I just have to find the time to do that. Still at my job, but not for much longer. I will be leaving there at the end of March, which will give me more time to take care of what I need to take care of for my channel and my website. Now for the chain method, we're going to do that on 4 of these wreaths, and we will be using the 4-inch pipe cleaners. For 10-inch mesh and 10-inch poofs, we'll have 14 pipe cleaners. And then for the last 6 poofs, we will do 12 inches. There is a more in-depth video on the chain method, and I will link it at the end of this video. And in that video, I said that I would go from, I used all 10-inch poofs. And I said, oh, the last ring needs to be 12-inch poofs. But after doing 4 in a row, I think I'm wrong there. I think that they all need to be 10. So, anyways, well, you can play with it yourself. Try a few wreaths and see what you think. But I'm going to give it another shot on it, doing all of them at 10 inches to see. And you just scrunch up the mesh and then measure down 10 inches. Scrunch up the mesh and then just put your pipe cleaner on there. And that's why it's called the chain method, because we are just chaining a long chain of these poofs. And it really, I've said before, it makes it so much easier for people with dexterity issues with their hands or, pain or anything like that, because this is a process where it's kind of broken down to where you do a bunch of chains. Then you're going to see you add them to the wreath form. And then you add some more decorations and embellishments to the wreath. And boom, you're done. That's how I can do 5 wreaths in 5 hours. It was really a little under 5 hours. It was crazy. Now here at the end of one roll, I don't always attach the end of that roll and reattach the beginning of another roll. I like to just overlap them a little and stick them together. That's what they do in ribbon. If you buy ribbon and you end up at an end of a roll in the middle of your roll, then you'll see they just overlap it. So you can see here's my big long chain. I just push it off to the floor. Turn the wreath form over so that I'm working on the back side here. And on this inner ring, we put them at the crossbar. And sometimes I'll do it on the crossbar, sometimes I'll do it on the ring. I've determined that I like the crossbar better. So going forward, that might be how I do it. Here you can see I'm at the end of that first ring, and I was having a little trouble because it was really fat, so I just went on the opposite side of the first pipe cleaner. On the second ring, we put them in between the crossbars. That way you don't have gaps in between and you're kind of staggering your poofs. At the end, you have to really poof out your mesh because it does tend to fold in. But it doesn't take too long to do that on this method because you really are only working with 18 poofs, so it's not too bad. And I've said it before that it's going to look ugly before it looks pretty. That came from May Made It, and that's what she always said, and it's so true. Here we're starting number 2, and we start off the same way. We count out our pipe cleaners, 14 for 10 inch, 7 for 12 inches, and the same exact thing, scrunching up, twisting on. And I don't show all of this. We'll go pretty fast through it. At the end, you just cut off your mesh, throw it over to the side on the crossbar on your inner ring. and in between crossbars on your second ring, back on the crossbar on your outer ring. Counting out again for number 3 here. People ask me all the time, they'll be like, how many of this and how many of that? So after this video, you should have it down. So it's 14 pipe cleaners for 10 inches, 7 pipe cleaners for the 12 inches. Or if you end up doing all 10-inch poofs, then you'll just do 21 pipe cleaners. And poofing them out. Here we're doing the pull-through method. I cut the pipe cleaners in half, so they are 6 inches. Attach it to the mesh, and this is a 5.5-inch mesh. You kind of put it on the back side of the wreath, but you're still working on the front side of the wreath form. But then you start on the bottom and pull it through. People will sometimes use their hand to show how to measure it. I don't typically measure it too much because you're going to see if it's too big or too little. I'll throw that off into the floor. But you still need to keep a little bit of mesh to work with, and it got all tangly. The woes of crafting. So you pull this back up and you twist it. Some people twist it, some people don't. This is a very basic mesh, and so I am twisting it in between, pulling it from the inner to the middle to the outer ring. And it doesn't really twist that great, and it's not going to stay, but once you get everything in there, you're going to be in good shape, and it's going to hold itself. There are 5 sets in between the crossbars. So it's inner ring, middle ring, outer ring, pull it through, and you're going to do that 5 times in between the crossbars. I end up using 3 rolls of mesh because one roll, and it's 30-foot rolls, one roll will get you just over 2 of the sections. And you'll see here, I use the transition just like I showed you on the other one, that I just overlap it a little and then attach them to each other. I normally don't have a problem with that where it connects coming up to the top. It usually just stays at the bottom pretty well. Probably because I try to plan it that way, maybe. I don't know, maybe subconsciously. But here's, I'm showing you that you just put it over that, overlap it a little, and then connect them. I find it so much easier than connecting 2 or 3 times on the wreath frame. And it makes the back look super clean. You just got 2 pipe cleaners and you just tuck those in. This one takes a little more poofing because you have a lot more poofs there. I'm not going to do the math. There are 5 sets into 6 sections with 3 rings. I don't know. I'm not doing the math. You can do the math. But it ends up looking really good. It's my favorite one, and it's very full. And it was the first one I sold on Marketplace. You are going to be able to do this chain method with your eyes closed because here we are. Scrunch it up, measure 10 inches, scrunch it up, and put on your pipe cleaner. Throw all that off to the floor, grab your wreath frame. And you know what? I call it wreath frame, wreath form. I go back and forth. I don't know why I can't come up with which way I want to call it. Here we're going to poof it again. And now that we've finished all of our bases, here they are. I think they look awesome. But now the fun begins. We are going to decorate them. I usually just decorate them with 6 bundles. I cut the ribbon, I dovetail the ribbon. In trucks, I usually just cut it at an angle, and I don't cut into the truck. I just cut in between the trucks. And this is a 10-inch mesh. I'm cutting it at 16 inches. It's the snowball mesh. It's so pretty, and I love the way it pops off of the red. But you just make a cruffle. People call them different things, but you just curl in the end a little, scrunch it up to the other end, curl that in a little. I put it in my bow dabra, and then I just add the ribbons and pull it out, put a pipe cleaner around it, give it a good twist. Then we're just going to add that to the crossbars on our wreath base. And even though this is the pull-through method and it's not as defined as the chain method where the crossbars are, it's still 6 of them is just plenty to make it look nice. And typically when I put on a sign, I will take pipe cleaners, put them around duct tape, and then I will hot glue the pipe cleaner and then cover it with the duct tape. That way, if like in the heat of a summer or something, if your glue starts to melt, then the duct tape holds it on until it sets again. I'll show you the sign process here in a little while, a little more in depth. But I don't do anything with the holes, so I like to make my ribbons come over the holes and hide them. Try to make it look natural. Don't just stick them on there and flat. And sometimes if you go off to the side like that, then it still leaves the end free so that it doesn't look all glued down, I guess. Here's the sign process a little more in depth. I put a little bit of hot glue, then I put the pipe cleaner, a little more hot glue. I already have torn off pieces of duct tape stuck on the side of the table, and then I just put it over it. Be careful here because the glue is still hot and you can feel it through the duct tape, so don't think that there's any protection there because there is not. We're on to the next one, and this one was totally different than what I had pulled out for it. The sign that was on there did not work at all. This is my favorite Valentine sign. It's from Hobby Lobby. You can see it coordinates really well with the colors on the base, and the ribbons look super cute. Now this one is a gold and red one, and this cruffle with a 5-inch mesh, I think it's 20 inches long, and then I just cut off the ribbons. Now this base ribbon, I use at an angle instead of putting a dovetail, and if you will take your angle and line it up to your line on your table, then you can get the angles to where they're exact. Does it matter? Probably not, but I just like doing it that way. And then here's another one, and this gold was just out of control, in your face gold, so I was putting quite a bit in front of it so that it would tone down that gold on the wreath base. Now I put these together. I've turned that upside down because I want the white part on the front, and that again will help to tone down that gold because there's more of the surface of the white showing. Because yeah, it was a bit much. And I do put a gold and black kind of sign on it, but it was a different color gold, and again, this one's just crazy. But I like it. In the end, when it's toned down, it looks really nice. Make another cruffle here. And that mini Bodabra, that's all I could find because I think my other Bodabra is in one of those boxes I showed you earlier. Now we determine how we want the sign to go on there. So I think it's just kind of offset and then the key to the side of it. But which side? And also, I did not like the way that little pink pipe cleaner showed, so I just put a heart on all of them, and it looked much better. Now we're on to this one. As you can see, that love sign is very blah. It needs a little more pizzazz. I'll show you how I fixed that in a minute. But again, we're in the same process. We're going to cut some ribbons. We're going to cut some mesh. Actually, I don't do mesh on this one. I just do 2 ribbons. And I love the ribbons. They coordinate so well with the sign. And then that burlap with the fringy edges looks really good on that base. This is the sign, and I had an extra one, so I tried to see if I outlined it with a Sharpie and then put some squiggles around the end. It really made the sign pop a lot better. Now I'm on to a bow for the final one. And everybody always tells me keep the bow process in because people like to see you make bows. But this ribbon, you didn't have to like twist it so that you had an outer side because both sides were the same. So it was just back and forth. Cut it off. Then I went to the white ribbon, and again, it's not one-sided, so I can just go from side to side, just looping it. And I didn't feel like getting my Bodabra out, or my Easy Bow Maker. That's my favorite bow maker. So I just held it. Kind of made it work. That's typically when I get my loops not the right sizes, but I figured this would be forgiving enough. Speaking of forgiving, I'm so sorry for the stuffy nose, and it's like I take deep breaths because I can't breathe. Sinuses have been horrible. So, and it's like everybody right now is like that, it seems like. But then I add this pink and red hearts. It's so cute. I love that ribbon. Now this one is one-sided, so you have to make your loop and then twist it and make your loop. This was a pretty sizable bow for a wreath, but I only did the sign and the bow, and then it was needed a little more, so I added some ribbon pieces in there, just a couple of pieces of ribbon. But once I did this, I thought, well, I put the zip tie on it, which is the best way to get your bows to stay. But then I thought, it needs a little more red. And so I went ahead and made just a little small 2-loop bow. Let me ask you a question. I say a 2-loop bow because there's 2 loops on each side, but there's actually 4 total loops. So how do you call this? Whatever. It's late. I always say that it's late because it's always late when I'm doing this. But would you call this a 2-loop bow or a 4-loop bow? And I've heard it both ways, but I call it a 2-loop because it's 2 on each side. And then after I add that, then I kind of determined that it needs more pink. And so then I add some pink to it. And that pink gingham is so cute. Love it. And I just add it right onto that. And then I'll put another pipe cleaner holding it on. And to be honest with you, then I decided it needed a little more white. And so I added a loop in the center, just one loop in the center to kind of finish it off. That's the thing with bows, man. They're never done. You're never happy. And I do the tails separate than I do my bow because it's just so much to deal with. So I cut off a bunch of strands, and then I wasn't sure how long I wanted the tails, so I went on and dovetailed them while it was on the wreath. And you can see that my hearts are both right side up on those heart tails because I cut it in half and made 2 different sections of it. Because if I just folded it, one side of the hearts would have been upside down. Here I'm adding a little bit of the ribbons there that was needed. And that's it, guys. Here are all 5 of the wreaths. That's my favorite, and it was the pull through. And then that one is the one we just finished the bow on. Here's the one that I used the Sharpie to outline the sign. And then here's the key to your heart with that gold that is really well muted now. Here's the video that shows you a little more in-depth on the chain method. And guys, thanks so much for watching, and I will catch you on the next one.